Good morning, everybody. I think in the interest of time and out of respect for all of our busy schedules, we'll get started this morning. Welcome back, everyone. It's a great semester beginning for College of the Sequoias. We're excited to be here this morning. Thank you all for taking the time to be here and spending some time with us for the first time in probably a number of years. We have a couple different pieces of what I consider really good news for College of the Sequoias. So we're excited that you're here because we're anxious to share it with you. Let me start by making a couple of quick welcomes and introductions. Not going to ask them to stand up individually, but I would like to acknowledge that our Board of Trustees has worked really hard with us this past semester and past year. They've been actively engaged in all of the work that we're doing in response to our accreditation. They've really reinvented themselves, and they've tried to take a look at their role and their responsibilities, and they've done a great job of recommitting themselves to everything that we know is necessary for College of the Sequoias to be successful. So just in the warm, welcoming way that we do at College of the Sequoias, let's thank our board members with a round of applause. That was an impressive way to introduce them because they're not here, right? We also have some members of our Community Advisory Committee. The Accreditation Community Advisory Committee is about 25 committed people that have been spending time with us every 2 weeks for the last year, and they continue to meet today. They've been a great venue for us to have community education, provide accurate information. They've been a source of monitoring, if you will, and public accountability. They ask great questions, and consequently, they've become built-in community advocates for all corners of our district, including Hanford, including Tulare. So we have members from the public of our Community Advisory Committee here today, and I'd just like to acknowledge them for their time and commitment with a round of applause as well. Okay, for those of you who may have heard that we were planning kind of a multiple part presentation this morning, including an update from myself and then an opportunity to talk with Dr. Pacheco, one of our consultants who's been helping us in student learning outcomes. If you haven't heard, we need to report that due to a conflict in schedules, Dr. Pacheco wasn't able to be here today, so we are going to be rescheduling him. He's committed to continue to work and help College of the Sequoias with student learning outcomes and service area outcomes, but he won't be a part of this morning's presentation. If you're privately going, oh, cool, we don't have to listen to another consultant, I guess the downside of that is it's more time for me to talk to you. So, but rest assured, there's a limit on how long I can contract my stomach and hold it in. So that's about going to be the duration of our presentation. So Happy New Year to all of you. I hope you got some much needed rest and relaxation. And speaking of holding my tummy in, I hope you made your New Year's resolutions like we all do. You know, I probably, like many of you, am recommitted now to getting back on the diet and going back to the gym and getting myself healthy. There was a period of time in my younger years for about a 10-year stretch from age 18 to about 28, where as I was going through college and working as a young teacher, I was also competing as a competitive strength competition performer. And so I trained 2 hours a day, 6 days a week, 52 weeks a year for 10 consecutive years. Never missed a day. Christmas, New Year's, Easter, weddings, funerals, I never missed a day. And for the longest time, I was so proud of that. And now as I look back, I realize it was mental illness. I wonder why my children are OCD. You know, I look at them and go. But getting back into the gym, those years when I was training, we would be in the gym early in the morning, and we'd see around January 2nd or 3rd, this just glut of people roll in. Here's everybody, New Year's resolution, New Year's sale, get your gym membership. And it was irritating, right? I've been in the gym every morning, 6 days a week. It's like, hey, who are you? Get off my piece of equipment. You know, you're messing up my sequence, everything here. And so then we realized, hold on, because like March, they'll be gone. They'll be done, you'll have everything back, free reign. Here's the sad news today. I'm that guy. I'm going back on Monday, and people are going to look at me and go, get off my equipment. So, and hope you took advantage of some of the New Year's Day sales, after Christmas sales. It's a great time to get things, that are on sale. I'm always looking for the 50% off sales. And so speaking of bodies and weight, I go into Men's Warehouse, and I'm going to grab, you guys are going, he's going to do stand-up for this whole time? No, I'm not. But I did go into Men's Warehouse because they were running 50% sale. I thought, I got to go hit 50%. Let's see what that is. I didn't need a lot of stuff. Needed some belts. I said, so I'm looking at the belts. There's beautiful leather belts. I get black, I get brown. And I'm looking at, they're 50% off, $24. Regular, $48. I go, okay, I gotta see a $48 belt. Told the sales person, I said, bring me a size 36. Let me see what a $48 belt looks like. In my mind, I'm going, I can get that at Ross for $9.99. I've seen that belt. She brings me the belt, 36. I go, oh, cool, this is gorgeous. Pull it around, I go, okay. No, wait. First of all, this is not a 36. Take that back. Didn't get the belt. So then she says, well, listen, we have a wonderful, wonderful sale on some beautiful wool sweaters. The record cold temperatures, Mr. Carrizosa. We haven't seen you. You haven't bought any suits here. I go, this girl's going to try to guilt me. She says, would you like to try on a wool sweater? I said, no, I'm not a big fan of wool sweaters. Then the word comes, well, Mr. Calvin bought one. Then I knew she is going to try to guilt me. But you know what I thought? Record cold temperatures? How many sheep are freezing right now so Brent can have a wool sweater? So I hope you hit the sales. Hope you had a good break. Hope you had a rest. Here's what we have to update you on today. First of all, the surprise we all received yesterday. We were at the ACCJC, and I'm going to tell you about that visit. But the surprise we all received yesterday is that the governor put out his January budget a day early. So our phones were blinging, stuff was buzzing, iPads were going off, and we were getting the news about the governor's budget. And so for the first time, honestly, in 5 years, maybe 6 years, we have some good budget news. That's a nice thing, okay? Remember a couple of important caveats for College of the Sequoias. A year ago at this time, we were standing here sharing with you that because of the passage of Prop 30, we were going to be stabilized in our funding, and we were not going to have a $4.5 million structural deficit. It was probably going to be reduced to about $1.5 million. And then with the passage of Prop 30 and the stabilizing of the funding, we were going to be able to fill in most of that $1.5 million and get our annual structural deficit down to a few $100,000. Now, I know that's a lot of money, but when you stack that up against possibly $4.5 million, we were feeling really, really good. So we do still have a small structural deficit that we're working every day, every week in College of the Sequoias right now to close that gap. One of the outcomes of this improved budget year is we have to get back in the black on our annual budget and spending. So that's one of the caveats I want to lay out for you. The other is, and I'm going to share it with you in a minute, is that we've got to take care of some obligations now that are going to come back to us from the Chancellor's office. But let me give you the kind of quick and dirty. You've read some stuff in the paper maybe, you've seen it in the news, but there has been a gradual and steady improvement in California's economy, and nationally it's improving. It's tepid, the data still looks fragile, but the trends are all in the right direction. And California tends to be the last to feel the impact of a recession when it begins, and we tend to be the last to feel the benefit of a recovery when it begins. So other states, as we look at them that are doing a little better than us, are trending toward what is now California's improvement in the economy. So the first piece of good news, we don't get to share this too often, it's usually the opposite, but the state, in building the 2013-14 budget, actually underestimated the revenue that was going to come in and overestimated expenses a little bit. So that's a good thing. That means we ended up now with more revenue than we had state costs in the budget. So there's a little chunk of ongoing money that gets to be added to this year's budget, 14-15, which improves the ability for us to get an increase in our general fund. That's a good thing. The other thing I wanted to point out, this FON, what we know as our full-time obligation number, for certificated faculty, for instructional faculty, we have a requirement to maintain a full-time obligation number of faculty. That was frozen a couple of years ago at the chancellor's office level because we weren't able to continue to maintain a number of faculty as we were losing 20% of our resources. So they allowed us to operate under the required number of faculty and not fund them as long as we didn't have the money for it. Well, the good news now is they're going to release the freezing, the suspension of that FON, which means we have to climb back up to that required number of faculty between 14, 15, and the following year. We've got to add enough positions to get back up to where we should be. And the good news is, I think the better news is they realized that so many districts were saving money this way that there's a little fiscal cliff in your budget now. Nobody has, another $1 million to try to climb out all at once. So they included the increased funding this year in the budget specifically for us to be able to do this. So the requirement came back with additional money to actually fulfill it. That's a great thing. They've also proposed some new growth funding in the budget, about 3% increase over what state general fund allocations are now. Growth is also called restoration, and that's the funding that they're giving us to say, over the next 2 cycles, climb your way back up to your obligated FON number. Get your faculty back in place that you had to reduce during the time the FON was suspended. The other thing that's being proposed is a small cost of living adjustment. 0.86, you guys, I know, is nothing to jump up and down about, but a small cost of living adjustment in the budget as opposed to another year of additional cuts is a pretty good swing. It's a trend definitely in the right direction. Also proposing some funding for student success. Student success mandates now, as a result of the Student Success Act, cost more money. Some of them we used to think of as the dollars that came from matriculation. Some of them are the dollars for student equity and access. Both of those categories got $100 million each statewide in this proposed budget. So we'll get a relative share, a pro rata share of that. It's restricted in the sense that we have to fulfill the mandates here in the student success implementation to receive the funding. But for those things that we're going to be required to do, it's kind of nice to get money to do them. And that money doesn't have to come from some of those other sources. And then finally, instructional equipment and facilities. There's about $100 million statewide, again, to be divided up into, no, I take that back. There's about $87 million here to be divided up into matching deferred maintenance for colleges, keeping your buildings up, roofs, electrical, maintaining the infrastructure, and new instructional equipment. The first time we've gotten instructional equipment money in the last 5 years. The things that aren't on here, there are a couple other nuggets in this budget proposal. One is that they're going to use some of the improved revenue from the state's economy to close the deferral gap. They've been balancing the state budget every year by deferring their allocations to institutions like ours. So they can tell you that the budget at the state level might be balanced on June 30th, but it's only balanced because they're holding money that they should have paid institutions back here in May or April. And so they defer payment to us. We get the money we should have got in June, in September, and then it's kind of like, every once in a while we have to rotate those bills at home, and that's exactly what they've done at a statewide level. So now they're able to straighten all of that out and pay all of the allocations on time. So we're no longer in a backlog as a state, which is a really good thing. So now new money going forward is advanced into growth and cost of living, not needing to cover deferrals of our allocations. So overall, there's going to be more details coming out, but this is the first part of the statewide process. It's just the governor's proposal. It doesn't mean it's permanent. Please don't go out and order your new car. It means that this is the beginning of the process, and this is what's going to happen between now and May as they get the rest of the indicators in, state income tax, property taxes, sales tax revenue, and in May they'll do a final revision of the budget and they'll adopt by June. Last year, the governor's proposal was pretty close to what May looked like. So we can at least begin tentatively planning concepts around this, holding off on final decisions until we get the May revise. Overall, though, good budget news. Okay, COS 2.0, kind of our mantra since we've been working over the course of the last year. Some key things that we want to update you on. COS 2.0 is kind of in full operation now. We've got systems working. We've got new protocols happening. We've learned some things. We know that we have to do some ongoing work and revision, but we've got a governance and decision-making system now that's pretty clearly defined. We have roles and responsibilities in key areas like budget, institutional planning, our departmental level program review, and district-wide technology. We have the clear definition of who are the governance authority bodies on this campus that by law have authority to make recommendations. It's the District Governance Senate, the Academic Senate, and the Student Senate. We've got a pretty clear definition of the work that happens under Academic Senate in all of these committees. And then there's opportunities at this level based on what's in the Education Code, Title V, SB 1725. There are some areas where Academic Senate interacts directly with the President and the Board. And then, of course, there's a number of areas where administration is responsible directly to the President and the Board. So we have a better, more clear system of operation. We're working at it now. We've got a cycle to improve it. And this is really our culture going forward. These are the operational groups that you don't see on that chart, but they're really important. The Instructional Council is our division chairs. We have a council now of deans and other appointed administrators at the discretion of senior management and the superintendent. We've got our Management Council, which is all managers in the district, a Facilities and Safety Council, and then the Senior Management Group. All of these have regular, ongoing operational responsibilities as a function of their job descriptions. So there is a balance between what gets decided in governance process and committee and what gets decided as a result of, the responsibilities we have in these job titles. And we're working that now to make it as clear and consistent as possible in our new system. This is the planning model, hopefully you've all become more familiar with, and it illustrates for you how we connect our mission to the master plan and how that informs a strategic plan and then drives the ongoing operation of both the academic program and the systems operations in our district. And just to give you a quick highlight, because we're in the middle of our first year of actually working this model, these are some things to be aware of. That coming up in September of 2014, we'll do what we're required to do now, which is an annual review of that mission statement. It may or may not change, but the important thing is that we have a process to annually look at it and review and make sure that it's still accurate. In 2015, we will begin our next 10-year master plan. So the current master plan we're operating under expires in 2015. So in the 14-15 year, this year, throughout the course of this year, we have built into our planning a process for us to engage people and collaborate to develop the next 10-year master plan. That will be underway. Strategic plan is currently in place now, and from that strategic plan, we've outlined the district objectives. The district objectives tie to that master plan. So for this year and next, for 13-14 and 14-15, we have district objectives that drive this cycle. They will be reviewed, and that strategic plan will be redone when we rebuild the strategic plan as a 3-year plan to support that master plan up above. This year we finished the last round of what was our previous model for institutional program review. We now have, these are the dialogue days. An element that's been built in here that we've committed to is building time into the annual year so that we put the institution on pause for a moment and we say, look, if student learning outcomes are important and service area outcomes are important, we should be stopping for a moment and taking some time to look at those, assess them, and make any adjustments we need to in either our academic departments or our service departments to better meet the objectives we have in trying to achieve those district-wide objectives. And now the annual program review process. This year in October, the last group of departments came through the old program review model. And what will start to happen this spring, January and February, is we begin training on the new program review model for 2014. When we stood here a year ago and we gave you an update, we said we believe that the new model is going to be more streamlined. It's about a 5-pager. We said it's going to be easier to do, less cumbersome. Actual work, actual time in front of the computer entering data or information into TrackDat is about 4 hours. And it involves probably 1 or 2 or 3 department meetings. So that's a great thing. It's a shorter, more practical, more meaningful process. The trade-off is we're going to do it annually now. It's better to keep track of ourselves on a year-by-year basis because we're also justifying resources. We're asking for resources and we're wanting to use our program review and the alignment toward our goals to justify allocation of resources. So more information will be coming out about the new model for program review. It's been reviewed and approved already at Academic Senate and also at District Governance Senate. Resource allocation has begun. We've got the current year budget that's underway. We have a $200,000 allocation from our board for above base funding. So in addition to the base funding that goes out to our departments and to our divisions for operation, there's money available through this process to propose needs you have above base, primarily equipment, capital outlay, one-time purchases. There's also a process to request faculty and staff, and that happens through instructional council, the division chairs, and through senior management for classified positions. So there's a way now, there's a clear way that's defined and easy for everybody to read to know how to get additional resources. This process happens at that budget committee level that you saw in the governance model. We're now at convocation as we're making our way through the year. This is that opportunity to do exactly this, give you a quick mid-year look and an update on everything. We also know that this is the time of the year that we'll start to build the district-wide budget assumptions. This begins at a planning retreat with our board at the end of this month. The budget assumptions for the district-wide allocations will also go to that budget committee. They'll also be shared for information at Academic Senate and District Governance Senate. So we've got a system in place now to put information out and get folks' input on it. We'll have a dialogue day again set for this spring, so at least twice a year. We've shown a commitment to stopping the institution and taking a look at our outcomes and assessments and making necessary adjustments and corrections. The process itself needs to be evaluated. How good does this integrated planning model work? How good does the governance and decision-making process work? So we have timelines in there to actually get feedback and evaluate the process, and if necessary, make revisions to this process. That all starts this spring and will be finished by the end of the semester. We also begin to compile data on the district objectives. We report the outcome of those district objectives in the annual college report, and that annual college report is finalized and presented to the board in September for the year past. And that's kind of our cycle. That's our process, and we're working really hard to make it effective, but not any more complicated than what you see right there. There's been more difficult diagrams than that. You all have seen those. I almost feel like it's an obligation when the president has the opportunity twice a year to share in front of the faculty and the staff to remind you what our district-wide objectives are and what they represent. This was an interesting process for us to develop these objectives. Remember the former strategic plan? It had 6 major focus areas, 20 goals, and 134 objectives. Too big, too unwieldy. That's the diagram I was referring to a minute ago. So that's now whittled down to 8 objectives. And we've heard pros and cons about the 8 objectives. You guys are great at sharing your opinion, and you don't necessarily care if I hear it. And that's great. That's great. And so some of you think our objectives are good. You get it. You understand it. Some of you think not so good. They don't connect with me. I don't know how I affect those. So let me share with you, I guess, a little bit, it's a metaphor, but let me share with you a little bit how to think about these institution-wide measurable objectives. And the thought that came to my mind was, if you take a look at this picture of our comrades out on the ocean, have sunken a big net, like we all know that you do, to try to trap and bring up schools of fish. Get those fish into the boat. The big goal here, get as many fish into the boat as you can. The method they're using is to sink that big net. You can see that as they're pulling that net up close to the surface, they're going to get right next to the boat lots of fish. And as you get all those fish right next to the boat, and the goal is to get every one of those fish in the boat, you can either reach in and try to grab those fish one at a time, start throwing them in a little bit at a time, or you can grab some handles, grab the anchors on the net. Those yellow buoys, if you look now, there's about 8 hands pulling that net, and when you grab the handles and you yank on the net, all those fish come in the boat. So what the institution-wide objectives are supposed to do is not measure an individual department necessarily, not measure an individual course. They're intended to motivate changes in those areas by measuring bigger objectives. Okay? So they're the handles, they're the anchors that we're trying to pull on. And so if you think about it now and you look, and I know you've all at least once, hopefully, glanced at our district objectives, they're those kind of bigger topic objectives. Objective number 1, provide effective academic support services as measured by an increase in the rate at which students successfully complete courses. That's a huge objective. If we affect that positively, if we measure those increased success rates by measuring that one handle, by grabbing that one part of the net, we pull in about 30 other fish. Because a lot of subsets of goals need to be accomplished for that to occur. And each of these objectives are that way. So I'm encouraging you not to be discouraged or not to be disappointed because they don't directly measure something that you can see as tactile, but be encouraged by the fact that they're leverage goals, they're leverage objectives. And by accomplishing those, a lot of other things are going to happen. And these are the other 4 objectives. We have a total of 8. And they're all very similar in that broader scope. Some of them, even though they're deliberate, even though they're a specific objective, they're intended to anchor one of those handles. If we can get more students to complete their SEP in the first semester, that's one of the handles we know that when students do that, their success rate goes up. But there's 7 things that have to happen for students to do that. And those are the systems improvements that we're trying to make. This is the state's version of that same big fishing boat. The state institution-wide is trying to figure out how can we put a few big handles out there on the net so that when every college grabs these handles, we improve the community college system in the state of California. And so we're aligning, if you notice, the things you read that we're doing, they feed right into these. Because the last thing we want is for College of the Sequoias to have a publicly posted scorecard on the state chancellor's office for the internet and the world to see, and us not be doing everything we can to be successful in these areas. And even though it's a great system because it only measures you compared to yourself, it's a growth model. How well do we do each year compared to the work we did the year before? For the consumer out there, for the public out there, for the coffee shop out there, they're going to click there. Click here to select a different college. And it's human nature, right? They're going to see how they do it at one college and how they do it at another. I'm not going to get caught up in trying to keep up with the Joneses, but I would sure like to be doing as well as we can possibly do here. Persistence means 3 consecutive semesters. Statistics show us when students complete 3 semesters, their likelihood of success increases. Same thing with the 30-unit mark. When they successfully finish 30 units, the overwhelming majority of them finish 60. They accomplish their goal. Completion is the degree and certificate completion. Remedial is what percentage of students are taking your remedial class and then after finishing your remedial class, passing the college level course in that same area. That's the measurement. And what the statistics tell us statewide is students who remediate and then pass the college level course succeed. That's a tipping point for them. So you can look back now at our objectives, and they're pointed toward these things. These are the statewide handles. We have our handles. Career technical education is the same thing. If their goal is to enter for a degree or certification or a license, what's the completion rate? And actually, in the next round of this process, they're going to ask us to track, did you place them in a job? So we've got some work to do with building partnerships with business and industry, because it's one thing to be certificated, it's another. If community college is going to be one of those educational engines that drives economic development, we've got to put students into jobs. Okay, so what's our emphasis this year to try to do that? Our ongoing emphasis. I know it sounds a little Pollyanna, you guys, but I think our goal should be to meet or exceed all the district objectives and to meet those state mandates. I understand 100% of anything is not realistic, maybe. It's not possible. But we're the college educators. We're the professional educators in the community. If we don't hold up the ideal, who will? Right? If I'm in a near fatal car accident out here at the corner of Mooney and Mineral King, and the ambulance rushes over and throws me onto the gurney, and they're wheeling me into the emergency room at Kauai Delta Hospital, and I'm laying there hoping that I stay alive. And as I go through the doors, I look up at the mission statement above the door as I go in, and it says, our goal here is for 16% of the people who enter alive to leave alive. I don't want to read that. The reality is not everybody that enters alive is going to leave alive, but what do I want to read? What do I want the hospital to believe? 100%. So I think we ought to make that our goal and recognize that our job isn't going to be measured in how well we hit every mark every year, but it's how we use our professional responsibility to continue to improve. Meet or exceed the accreditation standards. I'm going to tell you about that. Meet the mid-sized college enrollment incentive. This is a more immediate objective for us. You know, we get extra money from the state every 3 years when we hit an enrollment measure that's mid-sized college or greater. And this year, 2014-15, is our final year in that 3-year cycle to make sure we hit that. So we may be doing some extra things and then having to roll them back a little bit, get the enrollment to the place where we need to make the incentive, and earn the money so the next 3 years we get our payout, and then reduce those expenses if it causes us to deficit spend. So it's a strategic maneuver, but it's worth it, because if we hit the target, we get an extra $1 million a year for 3 years. So it's even worth overspending in 1 year to get the target, recover your deficit, and then use the ongoing revenue in the subsequent 2 years. We have to get back on track at the Hanford Center. We had to put this on hold like a lot of things when accreditation hit us, but it's time to get aggressive and a full court press on getting center status in Hanford. And the reason for that is that's another financial incentive for us now. With this state recovery going on and the chancellor's office feeling generous about where to put new money, some of it ought to be going to those colleges who were put on hold that were trying to get centers confirmed. So it does mean that we have to continue to shift resources there. It's not just getting enrollment there, it's getting services there, and it's getting programs there. So one of the things that we'll encounter is there might be some things that need to be shifted there. In shifting anything, it could affect us. It could affect you. So this is going to be one of those, again, one of those learning moments where we're a 3-campus college now. If you work for College of the Sequoias, it doesn't mean I work every day in Visalia. It's kind of the, ask not what your college can do for you, but how do we get the programs and the people, the instructors and the services to the centers so that all 3 of those centers are earning the revenue they can for the college as a whole. And then finally, all of these things, we believe, elevate our academic profile. And that's what that student success scorecard is all about. And I know that you'll say, and it will be true, that we're in a tough region to do that. Community college in the Central Valley has a different demographic. We have higher poverty rates than they do in the urban centers. We have a higher percentage of migrant students. We have a higher percentage of students whose second language is English. All of those variables are there. But if you're going to teach community college in California or Florida or Texas or New York, those states educate 3/4 of the immigrants in the entire country. So this is our work. This is our work. And to elevate our academic profile will assure that we continue to serve this region at the highest levels that we can. And finally, we have some specific things, kind of getting down now to what are we really going to try to do here. We want to, applause. If the anchor that we grab, if the handle on the net that we grab is improving student success and matriculation, one of the things we have to do is improve the outcomes for English. And one of the sub-goals to that, one of the sub-objectives to that is providing the support services that students need, because I'll say it, I'm a K-12 guy from a different career. We have to remediate. When we come, we have to pick them up where they are and we have to move them from there. One of the support systems that we have to do that in English is the Writing Center. And the Writing Center has always kind of felt fragile, I think, because we haven't established a secure source of funding for it. Our goal is to do that because we know it's one of those subsets that meets the anchor that we can grab on that net. Continue new and varied models for summer school. I know there was a little tiff over summer school when we brought it back because we eliminated it. There's 112 community colleges in the state of California. Do you know how many eliminated summer school completely? 2. We were one of them. And so I'm so glad that we brought it back, but it was gone. So now that it's back, we have to think about new and varied models for it so that it can achieve the district objectives. In a nice way, we have to organize the work of the college around what students need, not what we need. Not what's good for us, but what is it that the students need in order to be able to achieve those objectives. Summer school is one of those handles on the net for us. New evolved models for online education. Same thing. Chancellor's office, big push here. We all default, I think, or at least in most of the conversations I've had with you, we default to the notion that in online education, it's a very unique kind of student. The failure rates are higher. They don't do as well in online or distance education as they do in face-to-face. No computer will ever replace the person. I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. But there are different models for online education now than what we use. And if they can do it at Harvard, and if they can do it at UC Irvine, then we can do it. So there's different models. All I'm saying is we should be looking at how this can be done differently, because if you look in the governor's budget, one of the items I didn't show you is there's incentive money there for districts who are going to apply for innovative models. But we're not going to get new money to do what we're currently doing. We're going to get new money if we want to try something different. And the governor and the chancellor have an interest in expanding the technical opportunities here and doing it differently. We applied this last semester for a grant. We don't know if we're going to get it, but it's an opportunity to partner with the UC system and graduate law schools to build a pathway to law school. It's called the Pathway to Law School Initiative. And they're specifically targeting high poverty, high minority areas to try to increase the representation of those candidates to become students in law school. We have a paralegal program. We're bringing strength back to that paralegal program. We hit all the demographic targets. I mean, if there's any advantage to being the way we are demographically, we're eligible for every categorical fund there is. So let's take it and let's try to figure out how to do it. We've got our application in and we're excited about that as another possible handle on the net for us. President Scholars Program. As I've spent 2 years in the system now, there are a number of community colleges that have a President Scholars Program. What this does is it elevates the academic profile of that community college so that when they're recruiting from their feeder district high schools, they're recruiting the top students to come here as an inexpensive and very effective way to build the foundation for their 4-year transfer. I want to do that. I don't know what it's going to cost. I'll have to work with the foundation. I'll probably have to go out and raise the money, but I want to do that because we should be attracting some of our top students to stay here as a cost-effective way to build a successful transition to their four-year college goals. Targeted high school recruitment, if there's one thing you guys can appreciate about my previous career, is that I think I know some things we can do here that we haven't done before. And you might think it sounds silly, but here's a couple of things we're going to try this spring. And remember, you have to think long term. Nothing happens in a year, and for next year's registration, it's almost too late. But if we went out and not only targeted high schools the way that we do to talk to them, talk to their counselors, talk to the seniors, what I learned through this accreditation experience is that we could talk all day to students. It's more important that we talk to their high school teachers, their high school counselors, and talk directly to their parents. Because after everything we've done to advertise the work we've done here at COS, I still pull in a focus group of students from Visalia high schools, and they go, "Is COS closing?" They're 16. They have emotional palsy every 20 minutes, whether they want it or not. So there's three places in the K-12 system where you can really make an impact on parents. This is going to sound silly, so don't laugh. But if we were able to schedule a representative group of ourselves, senior managers or counselors, and we were able to go out in the feeder high school districts or the feeder districts to COS and make a 5-minute presentation at kindergarten registration. You want to see a room full of parents? Go to kindergarten registration. And hand the parents at kindergarten registration the trifold brochure on the academic advantage of being at College of the Sequoias in this area. And here are the courses you need to successfully pass in high school to be ready. And plant that seed. They're not all going to do it, but plant that seed. And then go back. The second iteration of kindergarten in the K-12 system is 7th grade. And if you've ever taught 7th grade, behavior is almost identical too. You know it. You know I'm not lying. But when you go to the orientation for middle school, all the parents are there again because it's that next big jump. And you talk to the parents as the students start 7th grade and you give them that brochure. And you talk about the quality of education. Are you there for that 7th grader? No. That 7th grader, you give it to them, they're going to eat it on the way home. You're there to give it to their parents. And then they're thinking. And then you go back one last time, 9th grade orientation. And they're there. Now they're on the cusp. And you know, every parent wants their child to go to Harvard or Yale or Pepperdine. And about midway through their junior year, they run the finances on that. College of Sequoias, huh? Right? We need to be right there. So targeted strategies are what I'm going to focus on as an advocate for our college using the experience I have in K-12. There's a new bill now, AB 86. You'll see it in the governor's budget release. He's going to provide, in 2015, he's going to provide new money for adult education partnerships between K-12 districts and community colleges. We're leading a consortium right now in our area. We're going to look at how to eliminate the redundancy. The whole concept came up because adult ed teaches some of the same stuff we do. And the state, quite frankly, doesn't want to pay for it twice. So what's going to happen is we're going to figure out what they do really well and what we do really well. And we're going to try to align that. And then there's going to be new money to come in to support both ends of that system. It's not going to change what we do in the sense that we're going to have to take on the requirements that adult school currently does. Because I was the first to stand up and say, community college isn't built for that. That's not how we're structured. That's better done at adult school program in a high school district. But what we do really well, for example, vocational career technical education training, they should not be duplicating if it's not effective. So we're going to figure that out, and I think that's going to be a positive change for us and streamline some of how that funding happens statewide. And then the last thing I want to touch on is that Dr. Castro, the new president at Fresno State University, has launched an initiative this year. He's 6 months into now, one semester into having appointed a Central Valley Commission to study trends in agriculture and the industry. And his goal is to elevate the academic profile of Fresno State by starting with innovations in agriculture. So we have to get on that bandwagon. If we're going to be a strong feeder in agriculture to any college, but especially a partner with Fresno State, we need to capitalize now on the fact that they've invested in a whole commission that's going to do a study. And that study ought to inform some of what we want to do in our beautiful new ag facility in Tulare. So we're going to get on that, and we're going to be a part of that as one of those handles on our net as well. So data-driven, focused on student success, processes for good decisions, and constantly improving. That's kind of our mantra. That's the culture. Let's talk about COS 2.0 and the status now of accreditation. Visiting team was here. We submitted, visiting team submitted their report in December. It was confidential and will be until acted on by the ACCJC. While they were here, I don't know how many of you had the opportunity to talk to them, but they focused on two key questions. They touched all the technical stuff they had to. They skimmed across the surface. Did you do SLOs? Did you do SAOs? Did you take care of governance? They hit all of that. But then in every one of those areas, they went 2 questions deeper. And those 2 questions were the same. One, how are you going to sustain this? We've seen COS make improvement before, but not sustain it. How are you going to sustain it? And then number 2, is it really a change in culture? And those were really deep, interesting questions. And I think we were able to answer those because we have good structures and a lot of work, and many of us collaborated in the process. So you can see there, it was about culture, change in communication, dialogue, decision-making. But here was the elephant in the room. And I'm just going to say this all friendly-like. They wanted to know, do you guys have a way now to have good campus dialogue? Are we going to come back and hear that the administration's fighting with the union, that the union's fighting with the faculty, that the community's upset about the program? Do you have a way now to talk about those issues that's going to promote ongoing professional campus dialogue? So what we talked to them about was that positive dialogue, if you look at the accreditation standards, is not about whether or not your administration gets along with your union or everybody's happy in negotiations. Negotiations aren't even part of accreditation. What the campus dialogue is about is, do you have positive systems to communicate with each other about how to meet the accreditation standards? And we could be fighting like cats and dogs over here about negotiations. We should still be able to have positive communication about how to work on the professional standards to accredit our college. So I had the chair of our committee in a little one-on-one meeting with me, and I showed him this metaphor. I said, look, this is kind of how we've been trying to think about it. I said, this is that 4-lane highway, and there's 2 lanes that get to travel in the same direction. It's not a fast lane, it's not a slow lane, it's 2 lanes, open access, going in the same direction. If you take 2 cars, and you envision that in one of these cars, we do things like our policies, our governance, our decision-making, how we operate the college, planning, curriculum, outcomes, student achievement, accreditation, compliance. These are the professional responsibilities to run our college and to remain accredited. And then you put in the other car employee representation, advocacy, negotiations, other processes like grievance resolution, mediation, arbitration. If you think of these more innocently, you guys, they're comparable. This is a governance and decision-making process that values diversity, respect, and differences of opinion, and so is this. These should not be weapons of mass destruction. They shouldn't be used that way, and they shouldn't be interpreted that way. So I've told you all from the beginning, that's not how I see it. There's union representatives sitting in here that will tell you 100 times they've heard me say, nobody's mad, we're not angry about this, but there's processes we have to use to solve some of these challenges, some of these issues. So if they're both important and they're both essential, and they are, they have a fair place on this highway. What they can't do is crash into each other. They both get an opportunity to move, but one can't stop the other. That doesn't mean that we take away any of your inherent rights under collective bargaining and concerted action. You can do those things. You should be able to do those things. But it doesn't stop the operation of the college. The way our protocols are written now and in COS 2.0 is we all have the opportunity to participate. But if participation stops, the responsibility for the administration and the board and those who do act is to move the college forward anyway. So we can't let those things stop the organization, but we can think about them now in a healthy way. So if they're important processes, and they are, they should be able to coexist side by side, and I believe they do and can. We should have respect for those due processes. So you can't value divergent opinions and the ability to disagree and healthy debate. You can't value it up here and then say that somebody's a monster doing it down here. That's hypocritical. It's the same concepts applied to each. So if we look at it as professional and not personal, this is a pretty healthy way for us to value and motivate both of those pathways and protect them for what their roles and responsibilities are. For whatever it's worth, this is how we overcame the elephant in the room with the visiting accreditation team. So the commission's meeting now. We were there yesterday. Thank you to Dr. Trimble, to Board President Lori Cardoza, and to Dr. Lacerna. The four of us went up and appeared before the ACCJC. Interesting experience. They were convened in a large ballroom at a big hotel in Sacramento. We didn't know exactly what it would be like. We walked in. There was a big square dais set up. We were at one table along this side with one microphone and 4 chairs to sit on, and it felt like we were testifying before Congress, basically, right? I did my best Howard Hughes. And so what happens is there's 19 members on that panel. They have a subcommittee, just like we do, for different things. And some subgroup of those 19 people read our visiting team's report and our show cause report. And their subcommittee was going to be discussing and making recommendations to the 19-member body as a whole to act on us. So we got 2 or 3 questions, I think very impressive and polite and positive questions. Mostly, in fact, all was about sustainability and what do you need, what assurance can you give us that this positive change is going to stick going forward. And they asked our board member to comment on behalf of the board's perspective and their role and responsibility. So we had our 5 minutes of fame. We supported College of the Sequoias in that show cause effort. We commended all of you and our entire community for everything that we've done, and our board members stood firm behind us and shared everything that our board has done. We got the chance to walk out of there. We had a very positive feeling. But here's what happens now. They continue to convene. They're meeting today. It's a 3-day meeting. They're meeting today because remember, we're not the only college in the accreditation cycle. They have dozens of colleges all at different levels. So they're meeting today. They'll take up our final business in their executive session. It's confidential until they mail those letters out in February. 30 days. So we figure around February 10th, we'll get our action letter. Remember what we've been sharing with everybody, you guys. We're on show cause. If you think of this as a needle, a continuum, and way over here is a fully affirmed, accredited institution, and then this is an institution who has to be on warning for some things, and then this is an institution that has to be on probation, and then this is an institution that's having to show cause. We're at show cause. So we need to push that needle. We need to reduce that sanction back to probation, or maybe even better, all the way to warning. Because the warning, lots of institutions are on warning right now. That just means you've got 3 or 4 things to work on, and the next cycle we want to make sure they're done. And the reason we're going to get that, I think, is because everything that we were supposed to comply with and do, we did and more. The only thing we didn't have enough time to do was show a completed cycle. So when you look back at that diagram, and you realize that we got to get to June and September before we actually do our annual report, that wasn't all complete when they came. So we think what they're going to say to us is College of the Sequoias did fantastic work. You have great structural changes. You've involved your faculty, your students, and your community. And we want to watch that thing play out and conclude itself at the end of the cycle. And then we're going to feel 100% confident. We would be very excited about that. Here's the education we're going to have to do now. I need all of you to be liaisons for COS. Because, oh shoot, this is being live streamed. Not our local newspaper per se, but newspapers in general, when they hear the news, let's say we get our action letter and we all want to do a celebration because College of the Sequoias has been reduced all the way to warning. Okay? And it may be, I'm looking at Paul right here, it may be that the article describes that beautifully, but somebody in the headquarters office is going to put the headline on there. And if I'm just driving down Visalia and I get to the intersection and I look over at the Visalia Times Delta newsstand and the headline that I can see through the little glass says, COS remains on warning, ! The coffee shop's going to go, dang it, they didn't get it done. So we have to be ambassadors of this information right now. You need to be telling everybody at your church, at your supermarket, if you play bunco, if you play soccer, you need to be telling everybody, this is how this works, you guys. We want to be reduced to warning because we're one step away from getting out of this thing completely. Okay? That would be a fabulous result for us, better than many of the colleges who have been on show cause. So we feel really good about that. In order for us to try to do our best to educate everybody about that, we're going to hold a press conference, and whatever the results are, good, bad, or otherwise, we're going to get our board members and as many faculty as want to be there and our students. We're going to get everybody lined up, and we're going to tell the community via a press conference, here's what happened. Here's our action letter. Here's what it says. And we'll do that in February, right at the time we get our action letter. So hopefully that will be captured accurately and portrayed positively in the news. Because we really do need to reassert ourselves now. We're in a battle for enrollment. We're in a battle for FTES. We have that year right now where we need to make the mid-sized college. So we have to do the best that we can. COS 2.0, I hope you all feel, is not a gimmick, not something to threaten, not a fad, not a passing fancy. I hope you see it as a positive metaphor for us to be able to build better systems for the college and to improve ourselves. All of us want to be better. I hope you wouldn't be critical of a president or a senior management team that set high standards and set high goals and then worked really hard to get them. Because it's not a way of trying to put pressure on the institution. It's a way of trying to motivate our systems to be better. That's what we're committed to. So in wrapping up today, it's a better, much better spring convocation than any we've had in a long time. We have good budget news coming up for this fall. We have a strong spring semester planned. We have another round of expansion happening in our summer sessions. We have an opportunity for partnerships with Fresno State and with other institutions. And I'm pretty darn confident that we're going to be treated very fairly and rewarded for the hard work we did in accreditation. So from me, I want to say to all of you, thank you. We could not do this without you. And it's been a tough experience, but it's been a good experience. And I hope it's the beginning of our institution continually reaching new levels prior to what we've reached in the past. I think from this meeting today, we adjourn to department meetings and division meetings. And if you're in a service area, you may have scheduled department or division meetings. And if not, we return to our workplace, because I'm sure we've got students out there trying to register, which is a good thing. Have a great spring semester. Thank you all very much.